All right. It's been a heck of a long time since I've done this. It took me like what, 10, 15 minutes to figure out my audio setup. Don't judge me, it's been a while. Anyways, my name is Toch, and welcome back to my channel. And on this channel, I make content that's generally related to tech. I say generally because I'm still in the process of figuring out what I want to do with this channel. I initially created it just as a way for me to, sort of express myself in all my nerdy glory and just talk about things that I find cool or interesting, etc., etc. I have a few ideas of things that I might want to do, like new concept videos that I want to do, and I have, things that I've been doing already that I'd like to continue. So this is just going to be a, a work in progress. I'm just going to make stuff and hopefully people watch it, and yeah, see how things go. Okay, so for this video, I'm going to be doing one of a channel favorite. And I say that because this type of video is the one that's gotten the most views on my channel. And I'm going to be doing a review of another software as a service, aka SaaS or SDK platform today. And the service that I'm going to be reviewing today is called Plaid. So if you've never heard of it, pretty much what Plaid does, it's a service that lets you get access to users or customers' financial data. So we're talking things like, being able to look at their account balance. So it's specific to like bank accounts and stuff like that. So you can look at account balances, you can look at, transactions that they've made, you can look at, whether they have loans that they've taken out, investments, income, etc., etc. It just offers all that information to users, or rather to developers, or the company, whatever business it is that wants that information from people. So now you might be thinking to yourself, as a user, why in the world would you let some company just have access to all your bank transactions and all that kind of stuff? And that's a good question. Most of the time when I've encountered Plaid as a customer, it's usually through other financial apps, like for example PayPal. Like say you want to connect your bank account to your PayPal for some odd reason. I've seen Plaid used in that context before. I myself have used it to build an app for one of my clients. It's a customer loyalty rewards application. It gives them points. What it does is like it, looks through their transactions for that week and finds, oh, if they visited restaurants or bars that the business supports, and if they have, it gives them points based on how much money they spent at the restaurants or bars. So that's kind of how, this can be useful. It can also be useful for, other, I guess, kind of more nefarious, that's probably not the best way to describe it, but you get the idea. Things like, just getting your data, seeing what you're spending your money on, etc., etc. Again, data is data. It's all about the way it's used that, makes a difference whether or not it's like a fair use kind of a thing, or, they're just like selling or exploiting your data, etc., etc. So like I said, I've been working with Plaid for like, I'd say the past maybe 2 or 3 months, as I've been working on the particular application for the client of mine that I mentioned. So I'm going to base my review based on that experience. Specifically, I'm going to be going over the APIs that they have for being able to look at different transactions. But of course, I'll go over, the service as a whole, as I've interacted with it as a developer for the past couple of months. So as usual, we start off with the documentation, and the documentation website looks great. It's easy to navigate. Like if you wanted to find things, they have like a quick start section that makes it kind of easy for you to get a hang of what Plaid is all about, but we'll get into that later during the learning curve part of the review. And one thing that I love that they provide is there's a ton of sample code, which is, one of the biggest things that makes a developer's life either super easy or incredibly hard, is whether or not they provide enough examples for you. And so all throughout the documentation website, whenever you're looking at, any of the APIs, they always provide you sample code for, okay, yeah, this is how you send off the request. This is what the response looks like. This is what the parameters for the request functions accept, etc., etc. And in case I haven't mentioned, this is going to be based on their Node SDK, Node.js SDK. And yeah, the documentation website is really good. Lots of detail on there, and you can easily get on there. And I don't think I really ever had to go off of their documentation to figure certain things out. I don't remember in the past 3 months of working with it needing to like scour GitHub issues or scour Stack Overflow trying to figure out certain things that were supposed to be working that weren't working. It felt like it was a completely smooth process. It did what it was meant to do and what it promised it could do. And yeah, it just, it just does the job. So next up is the popularity. So very few apps use Plaid. Again, this is mostly, financial type of applications. I wouldn't be surprised if like Truebill might be a popular one that people know that use it. I don't know for a fact that they use it or not, but it just seems like it's something either exactly this or something like this that they use to do what they do. But anyways, because it's not very popular, it's gonna get a 2 out of 5 on popularity. So on its GitHub page, it has about 422 stars, which is, nothing to brag about at all. But one good thing is that it has only 8 open issues as of when I last looked at it, of course. And this is really good. The less issues that are actively open, it means that, the maintainers of the project are probably, interactive, answering questions, closing issues, etc., etc. And it also means that, but it could also mean that, because there's not that many people using it, people haven't discovered all the bugs that are attached to it, etc., etc. So, take it with a grain of salt, but, I do think that based on my experience, it's the former than the latter. So according to the NPM registry, it gets about 83,000 weekly downloads, which, isn't too impressive when compared to some other packages. And then on Stack Overflow, a quick search for Plaid came up with about 1,000 and some odd hits, which again isn't too impressive. But going back to what I said earlier, I didn't really see myself needing to search too much things on Stack Overflow when working with it. So, take that with a grain of salt. So now on to the learning curve. So the learning curve gets a 4 out of 5, which means it's a good thing. So it means it's easier to learn, relatively speaking. All you really need is a basic understanding of JavaScript as well as node.js. And then, there's a few concepts that's, unique to Plaid that you have to learn. Like, for example, what they call bank accounts. I think they call them items. Like the linking process for how you have to, request access or permission from the customer to be able to read their financial data, right? So you just have to learn those unique concepts. But other than that, everything else is, JavaScript, Node.js, and they offer a ton of examples, like I said earlier, sample code, but not even just sample code. There's a bunch of sample repositories they have on GitHub. They just offer, so much cookie cutter examples that you can really just drag and drop and put in your application and have it work well. So the setup also gets a 4 out of 5, meaning that it's easier to get set up. All you really need to do is just go to their website and create an account. Once you create an account, you get your keys, your API keys, and all the stuff that you need to access the service. But I will say, though, I'm speaking mostly from the developer or the development environment and sandbox environment setup. If you do want to go live to production, there are a few things you have to do that's more on like the legal end of things, like stuff like, answering questions that pertain to, what is your business going to be doing with this information, just stuff that, it's outside the scope of what a developer has to do. But since this is a review for developers, I'm just going to ignore all that stuff. So it's really easy to install. So I installed the client SDK using Node.js, or rather using NPM, and that was, that's easy as NPM install. And then I installed client SDKs using React Native. And usually whenever you're installing React Native modules, sometimes it's hit or miss, but this one was a hit and it went smoothly. So now down to the most important part, which is pricing. How much is this going to cost that wallet? And it gets a 3 out of 5 for pricing. And this is because it has a pretty generous free tier. I think so. The free tier comes with like 2 environments. There's the development environment, which I believe gives you like 100. It allows you to connect 100 users, so be able to get information from 100 different accounts. And it also and then there's the sandbox environment, which is just purely development. So it's like fake credentials and all that kind of stuff, just for you to test your application logic and make sure things are working well. So just above the free tier, they have the pay as you go model, but unfortunately, they don't give much information about how they price this model. So it's kind of like, there's nothing for me to go off of there. It's probably something where you have to like reach out to them and request it, and God knows how they, you know, what criteria they use to figure out what they're going to charge you. And then their highest level is the volume pricing, which again doesn't offer too much information, but from what I gather, they're going to charge you based on how many connections you have, how many active accounts that you're looking at per month. I think the minimum price was like $500 or something per month. So this is for, very large company who, has lots of money that they can spend that much a month. So for most applications, most startups or, resume projects, you probably just stick to like the free tier or even the pay as you go plan. So the final score for this one is a 3.5 out of 5. And I want to emphasize that it's a pretty strong 3.5 out of 5. The two biggest downfalls, if you want to call it that, is the popularity, which again, it's not meant to be, it's not a service that every app has to have. Most apps don't need this at all. So it makes sense that it's not very popular. And then the pricing, there's not that much information about the pricing. And so those are what's bringing the score down. But from an integration perspective as a developer working with it, it's a beauty to work with. It's pretty nice. It's well documented. Not a high learning curve. And yeah, if you're thinking about building some kind of financial application where you need to access, the transactions data of your users or their current balance, or anything else that I mentioned earlier, I do highly recommend that you use Plaid. It's pretty good. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it wasn't too long. I intend to make more videos in the future, although I can't promise how consistent I will be just because there are a lot of things going on in my life at this point. Finishing up school, trying to figure out where I'm going to work full time, etc., etc. But for me, this YouTube thing is more of a long-term goal. It's going to be a journey. I'm hoping I can be consistent with it over long periods of times. And yeah, I enjoy making these videos. It helps me in many ways, just being able to talk about things that, I do, but also, it's great to have a presence online and, yeah, leave it at that. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the rest of your day. Take it easy.